Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 244 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to test and make sure that everything on the ore bus is up and running again. Enjoy! But we also want to make sure that all the other supplementary things are hooked up, and I think that we had filter inserters here. So I believe one of these went to the side, like this. Then it kept going. That's a weird red belt right there. But that'll get in there and get it fixed again. I think we also had to send silicon way out here, but also the slag. Let's see, well, we got slag here. These are the old parking spaces, so we don't need those anymore. That must be where the silicon hooked up. Oh, and that is the input of crystallizer ores. So that goes straight up as well. And there's kind of no reason for this one to be out in the middle of nowhere. It does look straighter, but why not just go along this one? And let's say it comes in along here. Let's see, it looks like these aren't quite lined up. Everything else is, so it must have been done that way. But it is odd. How it zigzags like that, but so does this one, it seems, so it's probably fine. Is the bot coverage pretty good? Mostly, but there's some suspicious spots in here. So there's that. And kind of a big one up here. The robots are working, but that's looking pretty good. Full coverage just about everywhere. Now I'd like to fly back there and send all the ore back to where it should be, because I believe we have a filter for every single ore type now that we've been handling. It's just storage chests being storage chests. It decided to put them all in here anyway. And even some transport belts. But if we close this off, start picking up ores, they should take them down to where they need to go now. And that's going to take all these ores down to the bus and on this sorting warehouse here that just kind of injects it onto the ore bus, and then they will be sent to where they need to go. The convoy of robots. But they're all delivering here, which will get the ores where they need to go. Okay, I'll leave this closed off for now until we make sure all the ores are in the right place. Let's get all these ores hooked up to where they need to go. So this is the silicon for making concrete. And I think that belt is pointed the wrong way, yeah. Let's see, we have the aluminum and the zinc. But I guess it's yellow, so I will match its color for now. Silver. The silicons, nickel, manganese, and I think we can reuse this mine, but at the same time, do we really need to? Might as well. If we don't have to move it, why bother moving it? So we've got to do a big old loop here. There we go. Well, that didn't work. And there we go, that mine is back for now. Manganese. The tin. Lead. Copper. And iron. Of course, the quantities are glitching, but remaining at 30, which is what we would expect here. Because we still have the logic disabled. We want to get all of the ore in here before we turn all that on. Because we should have a ton of ore in here, so when we pick it up, it trashes our inventory, and then they drop it off. Well, we're looking pretty good here as far as the inventory. Got most of this cleared out. Still got some wood in there, but the robots are helping as best they can with that. And there's quite a bit of resources in here doing their thing. But they will eventually get to where they need to go. And this should be a good test of our bus here, because a lot of our resources are completely out, which means a lot of this stuff wants to run pretty hard. Like out of copper, out of iron. So, to test it, since everything is set to 30 right now, none of it's going to turn on. You can see that all the logic has all these turned off, so when all these get hooked up, they should produce ore, but it should stop. Man, look how slow that's going. Couple frames at a time. Let's make sure it's running at full speed here. Basically, the output is a red belt. But the input, it is partially a red belt, but doesn't go at full speed. So as far as I can tell, that seems like it's working. It just seems so slow looking at these machines. At least compared to what some of them are, but it doesn't seem to be any kind of inserter limitation, so we can hook all these up. And there's a lot of weird numbers right now because the bots have been moving stuff around, but it will balance out. So let's get it all hooked up. When I see it moving so slow, it makes me think the factory's low on power or something, but it absolutely isn't. Well, I do see one potential flaw in this sorting method, is that if the warehouse is being kept full, and everything is running at full blast, the warehouse thinks everything's fine, even though there technically isn't priority, because everyone's getting it equally. So there's advantages and disadvantages. I think I prefer this method, just because it's so much easier than having all of those warehouses everywhere like we did before, and all those different signals we had to send across. Seems a lot easier to do it like this. But certainly, this will work if we're low on any resources. It's just if we've caught up and we're full on resources, because of belt speed limitations, it's going to be a little slow. But we could potentially fix that later with blue belts. So in other words, having belts that are faster than our production. So, it probably won't be an issue. But we have the mixture sorting. And it looks like I left the middle grabber inserters, which we don't need. Those probably exist on all of these. Luckily, the robots are helping now, keeping the inventory clean. So those get hooked up. Working fine. So do these ones. Also fine. But we got these extra inserters in here. And hook them up. This is our first slag producing setup. Make sure it works. Seems to. And this one is actually turned off. But that's because it's not set for some reason. Alright, what about bobmonium? It looks like it's just tin and then the sorting. So it's to be greater than 500. And it is, so it's going. Get more hooked up. It's flowing in. Make it aluminum. Making zinc. Making silver. And the chunk sorting. The next two colors. And the last one here. And here we go. Looking good. Now we'll have to test it for real. See how it works. But we're going to have our multicolored ores everywhere, except this one isn't running for some reason. Oh, I guess I just neglected to hook it up. Make sure this works, because these are the faster ones. Not sure about the output. It seems like it would work, but it might not. Nope. And because these are faster, let's use the stack inserters on the end, just to make sure it's compressed. But we got our ores up here. Well, the best way to test this setup is just to flip all of the switches and see how it works. Although we may wish to just flip one of them for now, just to make sure one of these lines work before we commit to all of them. But it would be a great test of all of the bus to turn them all on. So at least temporarily, we'll just flip on iron. So we go to the signal generator and just turn it off. And now it and every other method's going to turn on. Any method that produces iron, even the really bad ones. Because the level needs to go up first. So we need to see what this looks like. Well, it's not quite compressing. Double check that it produces 30 per second, and it does. Could just be the orientation of these inserters up here. It's mostly full, not quite. Possibly the reason why it's not full is just because they're based on productivity modules, which means its output isn't really consistent, that it comes in bursts. So it doesn't always fill up, but it looks like it's basically equalizing. Let's get all these inserters fixed. Alright. How is the production rate going? Doing pretty good now that it has some amount of iron. A lot of the bad methods have turned off. And now it's just filling up. Okay. It's not much to see. But actually it is something to see where the priority is working now because we were using more than we can produce in sapphirite. I don't know if that would actually limit anything right now. I think it was set to 500, but that kind of gives you an idea. If our consumption is higher than our output, these warehouses go down. And then the logic changes based on that. So as long as we're consuming, it should balance out. But time to run through here. and do the true test by switching off every one of these, which is going to turn on every production method. And we haven't changed this logic, so it should be the same as before. It's just going to be a whole lot of it. Probably lots of power being consumed. It's actually not too bad right now. It's not quite full belts, but it's getting pretty close. This part right here, especially, is very thick. But it's flowing. And it seems like the slag is flowing as well. That is a lot of ore. But these are all running. There's a lot of flashing, but just kind of look at the numbers near the bottom of the list to get an idea of what's being controlled. So you see how Saffrite is at 500 because that's the control point. So it's constantly consuming Saffrite here, but it's clicking on and off right here to keep us at 500. So that's kind of how that priority system works, because this is the lesser desired method of handling Saffrite. So it is clicking it off just to keep it right. But actually, when these things are running, you can kind of just tell. Like, this Crotinium is turned off because we don't have enough of it for that to run. And we're running low on all the chunks now, which has everything being limited, but it seems like it's working. You can see how we ran out of Saffrite chunks, so now they shut off. We ran out of Stereotype chunks, so they shut off, to make sure the best methods keep running. It seems like it's doing pretty good. A lot of these are shut off because we don't need any more. We're just getting byproducts from other methods. But it seems to be working. How's the crushed stone doing? Well, it's doing pretty good. The level's going up quite quickly. And we're definitely building up lots and lots of slag again. And we're doing fine with our acid byproducts. As far as our fluids, we're not backed up on crystal slurry or slag slurry. But on this side, it's at 100%. So we're producing everything we need. You can see we're easily keeping up with our requirement of catalysts. Although on this side it's a little slow, because we're just not producing anything. This might be a good opportunity to hook up these again. And we would need like a storage tank. It looks like we have one right here, which we can use as logic. Okay, so where's the slurry coming from? Up here. So the seedling goes on a wire up here into this. So if crystal slurry is above 10,000, it sends it to be making mineral sludge. And that's also if crystal dust is high, but that's probably not really going to be the case anymore. So this will probably never run unless it's got a different signal wire hooked up. And it would have to be to mineral sludge. Let's see what we had this set up as. That was 20,000. That one's 10,000. Let's say if it's under 5,000, this method turns on. So, mineral sludge is less than 5,000. Turn on. And let's see which wire has that. It's this one right here. So it just needs to be connected. That is going to mix some signals, I believe, that the crystal seedling is going to be in there, but that's okay. Same with the status of this warehouse. So that should run properly. And now we'd want this warehouse to run basically if this gets low. So that requires 10,000, so let's make it 20,000. So crystal slurry is less than 20,000. It can hook up, and they're both on now. And let's have another one in here. just to make sure this warehouse doesn't get super full, where the on condition is crystal dust is less than 200. So let's see how that works. This output kind of is redundant now, but let's see, that was from down here. Why isn't it moving? Belt's the wrong direction. That's from our geo generator here. But that's running, filling up the seedling, getting this maxed out. So that's working now. And the ore bus is getting pretty quiet. We've only got one on condition here. I'm actually not sure which one is turning it on. It doesn't seem like any of them would. It's one of the best ways of making copper. So that's why it's still on. That makes sense. But just like that, after running it for a few minutes, everything has caught up for the most part. And we are still using resources because all this has to catch up still. But it's looking good so far. We do need to move that Jivolite mine somewhere else. But you see, we still have tons here, so it's not critical that we rebuild it quite yet. Let's see, where would it go? Well, there is a mine right here, which would be really close to a rail. And honestly, probably not much would go in this space, since it's between 3 different buses. Compared to coming out here requires putting down some new rails. A little more work that might not be necessary. So we'd put it up there somewhere, but I'm feeling kind of lazy, especially considering the amount of resources that are still sitting in this warehouse, so we can handle that a little later once things start getting a little dry. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It doesn't quite max out the belts, which is a little annoying, but it's kind of how it goes. But we do have the correct machines technically to get this output, so perhaps with blue belts in the future, we can add that in there, and with that faster belt speed, as with everything else, would improve throughput and get maximum utilization of the machines. It won't max out the belt anymore, but it will max out the machines. But really, when you look at it, the belts may not be super compressed, but only the very last machines occasionally stop running. And they mostly run. But I wonder if just putting some stack inserters up here would do the trick. So if we went from fast to fast stack, let's see what that looks like. And maybe also if we override the stack size as well. Oh, it kind of helps, but probably unnecessary. But yeah, let's upgrade these guys on the top to stack inserters to just do what we can to maximize belt compression. Well, I guess the factory robots are going to help us with that. Oh well, they'll get the job done alright. So yeah, I think that turned out pretty well. It was a minimum amount of headache, where we expanded the bus to have space for more refinement types and just more empty space. We cleaned up all those warehouses with a different style of priority, and it works for the most part. Having blue belts would maximize its effectiveness, but for now, it works. And we went full productivity. Before we were kind of productivity and kind of speed to make it fit in the same space, but now we went hard on productivity, and that's a lot of ore sorting machines there. And we were able to copy the ore bus and put it back down without actually having to change anything. And now the factory's hooked up again. So from here, we need to add the new sorting types to handle our new resources. But that's going to have to wait till the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.